The massive council chamber stretched out like a silver dome under the artificial stars of Station Unity. Representatives from 847 different species filled the curved seats that rose in perfect circles around the central speaking platform. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of different languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Hyan Woo Kim stood at the defendant's podium wearing his best diplomatic uniform. The dark blue fabric with Earth's golden emblem seemed small and plain compared to the glowing robes and crystalline armor of the alien representatives around him. His hands were steady, but his heart raced as he looked up at the sea of eyes, sensors, and other organs that served as sight for the galaxy's most powerful beings. Captain Soyoung Park sat in the human observer section behind him. Her military dress uniform was crisp and perfect, but her face showed the tension they all felt. She had commanded Earth's diplomatic vessel for 12 years and had seen many difficult negotiations. None had felt like this. This felt like a trial, where the verdict was already decided. Dr. Taemin Lee adjusted his glasses and checked his tablet one more time. As Earth's chief xenobiologist and cultural expert, he had spent months preparing arguments about human nature and compatibility with galactic society. All those carefully researched points seemed useless now as he watched the alien faces around them. Most looked bored, some looked disgusted, few looked afraid. The council speaker was a tall being from the Altarian system. Its body was made of living crystal that shifted colors as it spoke. The translation came through clear and cold. We gather today to address the human question. For 50 years, Earth has been a provisional member of our Galactic Council. During this time, their species has shown patterns that concern many of our member worlds. Hyan Woo had heard these charges before, but they still stung. The Altarian continued reading from a long list of complaints. Humans were too quick to fight. Humans changed their technology too fast. Humans asked too many questions about things that should not be questioned. Humans did not follow proper protocols when dealing with other species. The worst charge was saved for last. Humans, the crystal being announced, represent a fundamental threat to galactic stability through their unpredictable nature and refusal to accept established order. One by one, representatives from different worlds stood to speak against humanity. The Vegan Confederation sent a floating jellyfish-like creature that pulsed angry red colors as it talked about human military history. Ancient Earth wars were discussed as if they happened yesterday. The fact that humans had not fought a major war in over 200 years seemed to mean nothing. A representative from the core worlds looked like a walking tree with silver bark. Its voice was deep and slow. Humans adapt too quickly. They change. Their society, their technology, their very thinking faster than any stable species should. This makes them impossible to predict or control. So Young wanted to stand up and shout that adaptation was a strength, not a weakness. But she knew better than to interrupt council proceedings. She gripped the arms of her chair and watched as speaker after speaker condemned her entire species, the hegemony of perfect. Order sent a robot that spoke in mathematical formulas translated into words. Human behavior patterns show chaos values of 97%. Acceptable species maintain chaos levels below 15%. Humans are a statistical impossibility in civilized space. Dr. Taemin finally understood what they were really afraid of. It was not human violence or human technology. It was human unpredictability. These ancient civilizations had spent thousands of years creating stable, unchanging societies. The idea of a species that constantly grew and changed and adapted was terrifying to them. Hours passed as representative after representative spoke against humanity. Some were polite but firm. Others were openly hostile. A few seemed genuinely sad about what they felt they had to do. But the message was always the same. Humans did not fit into the galactic order. When it came time for Earth to defend itself, Hyan Woo stood slowly. He had prepared a long speech about human achievements and peaceful intentions. He had statistics about crime rates and economic cooperation. He had testimonials from the few alien species that had positive relationships with humanity, Instead, he looked around the great chamber and spoke from his heart. Honored representatives, you say we are unpredictable. You say we adapt too quickly. You say we ask too many questions. All of this is true, but you mistake our greatest strengths for weaknesses. The chamber grew quiet. Even the translation devices seemed to hum more softly. You've built a galaxy based on staying the same. We have built a species based on becoming better. You fear change because you think it means chaos. You embrace change because we know it means growth. You want us to follow rules that were made before our sun was born? You believe that rules should serve life, not control it. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others leaned forward to listen more carefully. You call us dangerous because we will not stop learning, stop growing, stop reaching for something more than what we have today. If that makes us too dangerous for your galaxy, then perhaps your galaxy is too small for what the universe has to offer. Hien-Wu sat down. The chamber was silent for a long moment. The vote was called immediately. No discussion, no debate. Results appeared on screens throughout the chamber in 840. 7 different number systems and symbolic representations. 846 votes for Exile. 1 vote against. Earth's own vote. The council speaker's crystal body flashed bright white as it delivered the final verdict. By overwhelming majority, the Galactic Council hereby declares the Sol system and all human settlements to be quarantined indefinitely. All trade, communication, and technology sharing with humanity is terminated immediately. Energy barriers will be established around human space to prevent contamination of civilized worlds. Hien-Wu stood one final time. His voice carried clearly through the vast chamber without any need for amplification. You mistake our adaptability for chaos and our strength for barbarism. You exile us because you fear what you cannot control. But mark my words, honored representatives. The universe is bigger and stranger and more dangerous than your careful rules can handle. When that truth comes for you, and it will, you will remember this day. You will remember that you chose fear over friendship, control over cooperation, stagnation over growth. He paused and looked directly at the council speaker. And you will learn the difference between dangerous and deadly. The 3 humans walked out of the chamber with dignity intact. Behind them, 846 species celebrated their victory over chaos. None of them noticed the small smile on Captain So-Young Park's face. None of them saw Dr. Taman Lee quietly activating a recording device that had captured every word of the proceedings. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. 50 years had passed since the Great Exile. The energy barriers around Sol System hummed with power that could be felt from Mars to Pluto. They glowed like a cage of blue fire that nothing could cross. The galaxy had built them strong and deep, using technology from 12 different species to make sure humanity stayed trapped in their corner of space on Earth. People had learned to live with the glow of their prison walls visible in the night sky. Children grew up pointing at the barriers and asking their parents when the lights would go away. Most parents had stopped promising that they would, but in the underground cities beneath Sol, Admiral Jiho Choi was working on a different kind of promise. The hidden complex stretched 4 kilometers under the old city, filled with laboratories and workshops that officially did not exist. The Korean Republic had volunteered to host the secret project that would change everything. They called it the Phoenix Program because, like the ancient bird, humanity would rise from the ashes of their exile. Admiral Choi was 63 years old, with gray hair and hands that had built half the equipment in the underground facility. He had been a young lieutenant when the exile began. Now he commanded the largest secret operation in human history. Every day he walked through halls filled with the brightest minds from every human colony, all working toward the same impossible goal. Dr. Yuna Seohan looked up from her quantum communication array as the Admiral approached her workstation. She was 35 years old, with tired eyes that had stared at equations for too many sleepless nights. Her team had been trying to crack faster-than-light communication without using any galactic technology or protocols. The aliens thought it was impossible. They were about to be proven wrong. "Admiral, we have breakthrough," she said, in accented English that mixed Korean and technical terms. The quantum entanglement field is stable. We can send messages instantly, across any distance, without using their hyperspace networks. Admiral Choi smiled for the first time in months. Show me. Dr. Han activated her array. On the screen, text appeared from the secret human colony on Kepler 44 to be over 1,200 light-years away. The message was simple but meant everything. We are ready, Phoenix Protocol confirmed, waiting for orders. In another section of the complex, engineer 1J Kong was solving a different impossible problem. The walls of his workshop were covered with holographic displays showing manufacturing processes that seemed to bend the laws of physics. 1J was a thin man, with steady hands and a mind that saw patterns where others saw chaos. Quantum manufacturing is working beyond our expectations, he reported to Admiral Choi during their daily briefing. We can now create materials that reshape themselves based on need, metal that becomes harder when hit, circuits that repair themselves when damaged, even living tissue that adapts to new environments. The Admiral studied the reports with growing excitement. How long until we can mass produce? 6 months for basic applications? 2 years for military-grade equipment? But Admiral, this is just the beginning. We are not just matching galactic technology, we are surpassing it, above ground. The galaxy's monitoring stations watched Earth through their sensors and reported the same thing every month. Human civilization appeared to be slowly declining. Their communications were getting weaker. Their energy output was dropping. Their space travel had almost stopped. The Exile was working perfectly. What the monitors could not see were the new cities being built deep underground and on the dark side of the moon. They could not detect the manufacturing facilities hidden in asteroid mining operations. They had no idea that humanity had learned to mask their true activities behind false readings and carefully crafted illusions. Captain Daehyun Lim commanded the first successful test of their new stealth technology. His ship, the Shadowbird, was invisible to every sensor the galaxy had ever built. It used principles that alien science had never discovered, bending space and time around itself to become a ghost in the darkness. Stealth field is holding steady, reported his navigation officer as they approached the energy barrier. The aliens have no idea we are here. The Shadowbird passed through the barrier like it was not there. For the first time in 50 years, a human ship had left Sol System undetected. Captain Lim and his crew spent 3 weeks mapping the galaxy's defenses, recording everything from patrol routes to communication frequencies. What they found was shocking. The galactic civilizations had not improved their technology in centuries. Their ships used the same designs. Their weapons had the same power levels. Their defensive systems followed the same patterns they had used for 1,000 years. They had become so comfortable with their superiority that they had stopped trying to get better. Meanwhile, Dr. Hijanyu was working on understanding the alien mind. Her psychology laboratory looked more like a library filled with recordings of every alien species that had voted for human exile. She had spent decades studying how they thought, what they feared, and what they needed. They are afraid of change, she explained to Admiral Choi. Not just human change, but any change. Their entire civilization is built on keeping things exactly the same. They see our adaptability as a disease that might spread to their own people. Dr. Yu had developed psychological profiles for each major alien species. The Altarians feared chaos because their crystal bodies could shatter if exposed to unexpected vibrations. The Vegan Confederation had lived in perfect harmony for so long that any conflict seemed like the end of the world to them. The core worlds had automated most of their society, and their people had almost forgotten how to make decisions. They exiled us because we reminded them of what they used to be, Dr. Yu continued. Before they became safe and comfortable and unchanging. We are their past, and they are terrified of their past. The underground complex had become a city of 50,000 people working on hundreds of different projects. They had built new weapons, new ships, new forms of communication, and new ways of thinking about the universe. Most importantly, they had built hope. Admiral Choi often stood in the main observation deck and looked at the holographic displays, showing human colonies across the galaxy. The Exile had scattered humanity to dozens of worlds, but it had also taught them to survive on their own. Each colony had developed its own specialties and innovations. Each had learned to hide their true capabilities behind false signals and carefully managed appearances. The galaxy thought humanity was dying. The truth was that humanity was growing stronger than ever before. They were learning things that no other species had ever imagined. They were becoming something new. Engineer Wanjie Kong had finished his latest project. The quantum manufacturing system could now create anything from raw energy. It could build ships, weapons, tools, or even food from nothing but power and programming. The implications were staggering. "We no longer need to depend on anyone else for anything," Wanjie reported. "We are completely self-sufficient. But more than that, we can now create things that have never existed before." As Admiral Choi walked through the facility that night, he thought about Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim's final words to the Galactic Council 50 years ago. The old diplomat had promised that the aliens would learn the difference between dangerous and deadly. That day was coming sooner than anyone expected. The Exile was supposed to contain humanity. Instead, it had freed them from the limitations of galactic thinking. They had been forced to innovate, to adapt, to become something beyond what they had been before. The galaxy was about to discover what humans could accomplish, when they had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The Altarian crystal gardens were beautiful in the morning light. Tall structures of living gemstone reached toward the sky like frozen music, changing colors as the twin suns moved across the heavens. Among the tourists walking the peaceful paths was a being that looked exactly like a young Altarian researcher. Her crystal body sparkled with the same inner light as all her people. Her voice carried the same harmonic tones when she spoke to other visitors. But behind those glowing crystal eyes was the mind of Spy Master Yoon-ji Song, the deadliest human intelligence operative who had ever lived. The surgical modifications had taken 3 years to complete and another 2 years to perfect. Human doctors had replaced her bones with synthetic crystal, rewired her nervous system to produce harmonic vibrations, and even changed her blood chemistry to match Altarian biology. To every scanner and sensor in the galaxy, she was a perfect Altarian citizen named Selyuk of the Seventh Harmony. As she walked through the gardens, Yoon-ji mentally recorded everything she saw: the placement of security cameras, the patrol routes of the Crystal Guards, the weak points in their defensive systems. Most importantly, she was gathering intelligence about the greatest secret in Altarian society. They were dying. The perfect crystal beings, who had led the vote to exile humanity, were slowly losing their ability to maintain their crystalline structure. Their children were being born with flaws. Elders were developing cracks that could not be healed. The Altarian leadership was desperately searching for a solution while hiding the crisis from the rest of the galaxy. EU Ungu touched a communication crystal hidden in her chest cavity. The message was sent instantly through quantum entanglement to Admiral Choi's headquarters on Earth. Another piece of the puzzle was complete. Across the galaxy on the water world of Aquatica Prime, Captain Dae-hyun Lim was completing his own impossible mission. His ghost ship remained completely invisible as it drifted through the Vegan Confederation's most secure naval base. The jellyfish-like beings floated through there underwater. Cities completely unaware that human eyes were watching their every move. Dae-hyun had been conducting reconnaissance missions for 15 years. His ship used technology that bent light and gravity around itself, making it invisible to any form of detection the galaxy had ever developed. He had mapped every major military installation, trade route, and defensive position in galactic space. The information he was gathering painted a disturbing picture. The Galactic Council's military forces were spread too thin across too many worlds. Their equipment was outdated by centuries. Their tactics had not changed since the last major war 3,000 years ago. Most shocking of all, many species were experiencing internal problems they were hiding from their allies. The Vegan Confederation was dealing with widespread depression among their people. The perfect harmony they had maintained for millennia was causing their citizens to lose all sense of individual purpose. Suicide rates were climbing, while birth rates were falling. They were slowly disappearing as a species. Dr. Hyjin, You had predicted this from her psychological studies. Perfect societies eventually collapsed because they removed all challenge and growth from life. The galaxy was not just stagnant, it was slowly dying from its own perfection. On the core worlds, another human agent was discovering even worse secrets. The tree-like beings had automated so much of their civilization that most of their people had forgotten how to think for themselves. Their great computer networks made every decision from what to eat for breakfast to which citizens should be allowed to reproduce. But the computers were breaking down. Ancient programming was developing errors. The vast databases that controlled their society were becoming corrupted. The tree people were losing the ability to fix their own systems because they had forgotten how to problem solve without computer assistance. They were trapped in a technological prison of their own making. Back on Earth, Admiral Choi stood in his command center, reviewing reports from hundreds of human agents scattered across the galaxy. The holographic displays showed a detailed map of galactic civilization that was more complete than anything the Galactic Council possessed about itself. Status report. He requested from his senior staff. Spy Master Yunji appeared on the main screen via quantum communication. Even though she looked like an Altarian, her voice carried the tone of a human soldier reporting to her commanding officer. The Altarians are experiencing what they call the Great Dimming. Their crystal bodies are losing structural integrity. Their scientists estimate they have maybe 50 years before total civilization collapse. They are trying to find a cure, but their research is limited by their refusal to accept that change might be necessary for survival. Captain Daehine's report came next. Vegan Confederation military strength is at 30% of reported levels. Most of their ships are running on automated systems because their crews are experiencing psychological breakdowns. Perfect harmony is making them unable to handle any form of stress or conflict. Dr. Haijin, you stepped forward with her analysis. Admiral, we are seeing the same pattern across every major galactic civilization. They have achieved the stability they wanted, but that stability is killing them.
Wow.
They are not evolving, not adapting, not growing. They are becoming extinct through their own success. Admiral Choi studied the data with growing understanding. The galaxy had not exiled humanity because humans were dangerous to galactic civilization. They had exiled humanity because humans represented everything the galaxy had given up in exchange for safety and comfort. The ability to change, the willingness to take risks, the courage to face the unknown. What about the core worlds? He asked. The answer came from Agent Minsu Chen, who had spent 10 years disguised as a maintenance robot in their central computer facilities. The core worlds are experiencing cascade system failures. Their computers are breaking down and their people have lost the knowledge to repair them. They're requesting emergency assistance from other species, but no one else has the technical expertise to help. Engineer 1J Kong had been listening to all the reports with growing excitement. Admiral, do you see what this means? The galaxy is not just vulnerable to outside attack. It is vulnerable to any disruption of their carefully maintained order. They have built their entire civilization like a house of cards. One small push, and the whole thing comes tumbling down. Admiral Choi nodded slowly. The intelligence they had gathered over the past 50 years revealed a shocking truth. The Galactic Council was not the mighty alliance of advanced civilizations it appeared to be. It was a collection of dying species clinging to outdated systems that were slowly failing. But that was not the most important discovery. The most important discovery was what their agents had detected in the deep space monitoring stations at the edge of the galaxy. Strange signals were coming from the void between galaxies. Something was out there in the darkness, moving toward galactic space. The alien monitoring stations had detected the signals months ago, but they're outdated. Computer systems could not identify what was causing them. Dr. Haijin, you had analyzed the signal patterns and her conclusions were terrifying. Whatever is coming is artificial. It is intelligent. And it is adapting its approach based on the defensive responses it encounters. This is not a natural phenomenon. This is an invasion. The galactic civilizations were about to face their first major external threat in thousands of years, and they were completely unprepared for it. Their military forces were weak and scattered. Their technology was outdated. Their leadership was paralyzed by bureaucracy and fear of change. Most importantly, they had exiled the only species in the galaxy that specialized in adapting to new threats and finding creative solutions to impossible problems. Admiral Choi looked around the command center at his team of brilliant officers and scientists. They had spent 50 years preparing for this moment without even knowing it. Humanity had been forced to become stronger, smarter, and more adaptable than any species in galactic history. Prepare a message to all human agents, he ordered. Begin Phase 2 of the Phoenix Protocol. It is time to come out of the shadows. The galaxy was about to discover that the species they had exiled for being too dangerous was the only thing standing between them and total destruction. The universe was about to teach 846 civilizations the difference between dangerous and deadly. And humanity was about to show them what 50 years of forced evolution could accomplish when survival was the only option. The first Devourer ship appeared at the edge of galactic space on a Tuesday morning. It was massive beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, stretching over 50 kilometers from end to end. Its hull was black metal that seemed to absorb light itself, and it moved through space with the deliberate purpose of a predator hunting prey, the Outer Rim. Defense Station detected it first. Lieutenant Zekska of the Altarian Defense Force was monitoring the deep space sensors when his screens erupted with warnings. The readings made no sense. The ship was using energy patterns that did not match any known technology in galactic databases. Within hours, the mysterious vessel had consumed 3 entire asteroid mining facilities. The metal and rock were somehow converted into more ship material, making the Devourer even larger and more powerful. When the first galactic patrol ships arrived to investigate, they simply vanished. No distress calls, no wreckage, nothing. On Earth, Admiral Choi received the intelligence reports from his agents throughout the galaxy. The quantum communication networks were buzzing with panic as more Devourer ships appeared in different sectors. Each one was unique in design but followed the same pattern. They consumed everything in their path and grew stronger from what they ate. General Subin Jang stood beside the Admiral in the underground command center, studying the tactical displays with a soldier's eye for detail. He was 55 years old, with sharp features and hands that had built some of humanity's most advanced weapons. Her specialty was turning impossible situations into victories through careful planning and creative thinking. They are not organic, she observed, watching the sensor recordings of Devourer ships. These are machines. It's artificial intelligences designed for one purpose: consumption and conversion. They turn everything they encounter into more of themselves. Dr. Nyang Chai looked up from her analysis station, where she had been studying the energy patterns of the alien machines. She was 38 years old, with tired eyes that had spent too many sleepless nights working on humanity's secret weapons projects. Her team had developed adaptive combat systems that could learn and change during battle. "Admiral, these Devourers are using learning algorithms," she reported. "Each time the galactic forces try a new defensive strategy, the machines adapt to counter it. They are becoming more effective with every encounter." The galactic response was exactly what Admiral Choi had expected: slow, bureaucratic, and completely inadequate for the threat they faced. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions to debate proper procedures. The Altarian Defense Force tried to use their standard battle formations from the last war 3,000 years ago. The Vegan Confederation attempted to negotiate with machines that had no interest in communication. Everything failed. Commander Inhobik had been preparing for this moment for 20 years. His shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt had been building a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ships were smaller than traditional galactic vessels, but infinitely more advanced. They used humanity's breakthrough technologies, including adaptive armor, quantum weapons, and AI systems that could think faster than any biological brain. Fleet status report, Admiral Choi requested during the emergency briefing. Commander Beek smiled with the confidence of someone who had spent decades preparing for war. "We have 200 ships ready for immediate deployment. Each one is equipped with adaptive combat systems that can modify their tactics in real time. Our weapons, can reconfigure themselves based on enemy responses. Our hulls can reshape to deflect new types of attack. The difference between human and galactic technology was becoming clear. The galaxy had built their ships to follow predetermined patterns and standard procedures. Humanity had built their ships to learn, adapt, and evolve during combat. As the Devourer invasion spread across galactic space, the established civilizations found themselves helpless against an enemy that countered their every move. The core worlds tried to use their ancient automated defense systems, but the machines had been designed to fight biological enemies, not adaptive artificial intelligences. The vegan confederation's harmony-based tactics were useless against opponents that felt no emotion and showed no mercy. Most devastating of all, the Altarian crystal ships shattered like glass when they encountered Devourer energy weapons. The beautiful beings who had led the vote to exile humanity watched their fleets crumble in the darkness of space. The Galactic Council sent a desperate message to their monitoring stations around Sol System. For 50 years they had maintained the energy barriers to keep humanity imprisoned. Now they needed to lower those barriers to send a communication through. The message was short and humiliating. Earth, we require immediate assistance. Unknown hostile forces are attacking galactic civilization. Please respond. In the underground command center, Admiral Choi read the message aloud to his senior staff. The room was quiet for a long moment. These were the same beings who had voted unanimously to exile humanity for being too dangerous and unpredictable. Ambassador Myung Kim stepped forward. She was the daughter of the legendary Hyun-woo Kim, who had delivered humanity's final warning. To the Galactic Council 50 years ago, she had inherited her father's diplomatic skills and his iron determination. At 45 years old, she had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. Admiral, request permission to respond to the Galactic Council, she said formally. Admiral Choi nodded. Permission granted, Ambassador. Myung activated the quantum communication array. Her voice carried clearly across the galaxy to the emergency session of the Galactic Council. Her words were calm and professional, but they carried the weight of 50 years of exile and preparation. Honorable representatives of the Galactic Council, received your request for assistance. However, we must remind you that 50 years ago, you voted to exile humanity from galactic civilization. You declared us too dangerous and unpredictable to be trusted with the safety of your worlds. You built energy barriers around our system to contain what you called our chaotic nature. The silence from the other end of the communication was deafening. You face an enemy that your predictable strategies cannot defeat. An enemy that adapts to your standard procedures and learns from your traditional tactics. An enemy that requires exactly the kind of dangerous unpredictability you exiled us for possessing. Ambassador Myung paused to let that sink in. Yes. Price for our assistance has changed. We are no longer asking to be accepted as junior members of your galactic order. We are offering to lead the defense against this threat, but only under our terms and using our methods. All methods that you previously declared too dangerous for civilized space. General Subin Jang stepped up to the communication array. Council representatives, this is General Jang of the Human Defense Forces. Our intelligence indicates that standard galactic military doctrine will fail against these devourer machines. They adapt too quickly to predictable attack patterns. The only way to defeat an adaptive enemy is with unpredictable tactics and creative solutions. She paused to review the tactical displays showing devourer movements across the galaxy. Estimate you have 72 hours before the invasion reaches the core worlds. After that, your industrial capacity will be consumed and converted into more enemy ships. This crisis will then become impossible to resolve through military action. The response from the Galactic Council came within minutes. It was not the formal diplomatic language they usually used. It was the desperate plea of civilizations facing extinction. What do you need from us? Admiral Choi took control of the communication. Complete operational authority over all galactic defense forces. Immediate removal of all energy barriers around human space. Full access to galactic manufacturing and resource networks. And formal recognition that humanity will lead galactic civilization through this crisis and any future challenges? There was a long pause before the council speaker responded. These terms are acceptable. Please help us. Admiral Choi looked around the command center at his team of brilliant officers and scientists. They had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. 50 years of forced evolution, technological advancement, and strategic planning. All units, this is Phoenix Command, he announced, on all channels. Operation Emergence is now active. Humanity has work to do. The energy barriers around Sol System flickered and died. For the first time in 50 years, human ships emerged into galactic space. But they were not the same humans who had been exiled decades ago. They were something new, something evolved, something that the universe had never seen before. The galaxy. It was about to discover what 50 years of dangerous unpredictability could accomplish when directed toward a common enemy. The energy barriers around Sol System dissolved like morning mist, and what emerged from behind them changed the galaxy forever. The human fleet that poured out of Earth's solar system was unlike anything that had ever been seen in galactic space. 200 ships that moved like living things, their hulls flowing and shifting as they traveled through the darkness between stars. Fleet. Admiral Seung-ho Park stood on the bridge of the flagship Unbroken Promise, watching as his fleet deployed. Across multiple star systems in perfect coordination. He was the son of Captain Soyoung Park, who had witnessed humanity's exile 50 years ago. Like his mother, he carried himself with quiet dignity and unshakable determination. But unlike the diplomats of the past, he was here to fight. Unbroken Promise itself was a marvel of human engineering that defied every rule of galactic ship design. Its hull was made of quantum-adaptive metal that could become harder than diamond when struck or flow like liquid when repairs were needed. Its weapon systems could reconfigure themselves mid-battle, creating new types of energy beams and projectile weapons as the situation demanded. Admiral, we are receiving distress calls from 17 different star systems, reported his communications officer. The Devourers have consumed everything in the Outer Rim and are moving toward the core worlds. Galactic resistance has collapsed completely. Admiral Park studied the tactical displays showing Devourer movements across the galaxy. The machine intelligences had grown exponentially since their first appearance. What had started as a few dozen ships had become thousands, each one larger and more powerful than the last. They moved in coordinated swarms that adapted their tactics with every encounter. Analysis of enemy patterns? He requested from his tactical team. Lieutenant Commander Yan Ho Shin stepped forward with her report. She was 32 years old. With sharp eyes that missed nothing and a mind that could process complex battle data faster than most computers. Her specialty was finding weaknesses in seemingly perfect systems. The Devourers use predictive algorithms to counter enemy tactics, she explained. They analyze attack patterns and develop countermeasures in real time. However, their adaptation process requires consistent data input. If we can present them with truly random and unpredictable tactics, we can overload their learning systems. This was exactly what Admiral Park had hoped to hear. Human military doctrine had been specifically developed around unpredictability and creative problem-solving, while galactic forces followed standard procedures that could be analyzed and countered. Human tactics were designed to be chaotic and adaptive. Fleet orders, Admiral Park announced on all channels. Engage the enemy using Protocol Chaos. All ships are authorized to develop their own attack patterns. No standardized formations. No predictable tactics. Let's make it impossible for them to learn what we are going to do next. The first battle took place in the Kepler system, where a massive Devourer hive ship was consuming the orbital mining platforms. The human fleet approached from 6 different directions using completely different attack methods. Some ships used energy weapons. Others fired kinetic projectiles. A few released swarms of adaptive nanobots that could eat through Devourer hull. Material, most importantly, every human ship changed its tactics every few minutes. Just as the Devourer began to adapt to energy beam attacks, the humans switched to projectile weapons. When the machine intelligence started countering kinetic impacts, humans deployed chemical weapons that could dissolve metal. When chemical, countermeasures were developed. The humans used gravitational field manipulators to tear the enemy's ship apart from the inside. The Devourer hive ship, which had easily destroyed dozens of galactic vessels, found itself unable to predict or counter the human assault. Its learning algorithms became trapped in recursive loops, trying to adapt to attack patterns that changed faster than it could process them. Admiral Park watched with satisfaction as the massive enemy vessel began to break apart under the coordinated but unpredictable human assault. Target neutralized. All ships, proceed to next engagement zone. President Zhu Wuli received the battle reports from her command center on Earth. She was 60 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had seen her species evolve from galactic outcasts to the galaxy's last hope. As the elected leader of humanity, during their greatest crisis, she carried the weight of not just human survival, but the survival of every intelligent species in the galaxy. Casualties, she asked Admiral Choi, who was coordinating the overall military campaign. Minimal, he reported with obvious relief. Our adaptive hull technology is proving highly effective against Devourer weapons. When they hit us with energy beams, our ships become more resistant to energy attacks. When they switch to kinetic weapons, our hulls adapt to absorb impact damage. The human fleet was not just fighting the Devourers, they were learning from them. Every attack made human ships stronger and more capable. It was evolutionary warfare taken to its logical extreme. The decisive battle came when the largest Devourer hive mind, a ship over 100 kilometers long, approached the core worlds with an escort of 300 smaller vessels. This was the central intelligence that controlled the entire invasion. If it could be destroyed, the rest of the Devourer fleet would lose coordination and become manageable. Fleet Admiral Park led the assault personally. The Unbroken Promise had grown and adapted through dozens of battles, incorporating new technologies and weapon systems with each encounter. Its hull now shimmered with energy fields that could deflect any known weapon. Its weapon systems could create attack patterns that had never existed before in galactic warfare. All ships, this is the final engagement, Admiral Park announced. The enemy hive mind will throw everything it has at us. Remember your training. Stay unpredictable. Stay adaptive. Show them what humanity learned during 50 years of exile. The battle lasted 3 days and covered an entire star system. Human ships danced through space like schools of fish, never maintaining the same formation for more than a few minutes. They attacked from impossible angles using weapons that reconfigured themselves mid-flight. Most importantly, they coordinated their assault using quantum communication that the Devourers could not intercept or understand. Lieutenant Commander Yinhua Xin led the final assault on the hive mind's core. Her ship, the Relentless Storm, had been modified during the battle to carry a weapon that had never been tested. It used quantum entanglement to create a feedback loop in the Devourer's learning algorithms, essentially making the machine intelligence attack itself. Target locked, she reported as her ship dove toward the massive enemy vessel, firing quantum disruptor. The weapon struck the hive mind's central processing core and triggered a cascade failure throughout the entire Devourer network. Every machine intelligence in the fleet suddenly lost the ability to adapt or learn. They became sitting targets for the human fleet's conventional weapons. When the battle ended, the Devourer threat was eliminated. The galaxy was saved by the species that had been exiled for being too dangerous and unpredictable. In the rebuilt Galactic Council chambers, President Ji Wuli stood before the assembled representatives of 847 species. Many of the seats were empty. The Altarian delegation had been reduced to a handful of survivors whose crystal bodies were cracked and dimmed. The Vegan Confederation's representatives floated listlessly in their tanks, their harmony shattered by the trauma of war. Honored representatives, President Lee began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. You voted to exile humanity because we were unpredictable? Because we adapted too quickly? Because we refused to follow rules that were made before our son was born? She paused and looked around the chamber at the alien faces that had once condemned her species. You were right about us. We are unpredictable. We do adapt quickly. We do refuse to follow outdated rules. But you were wrong about what those traits mean. You thought they made us dangerous to galactic civilization? Truth is, they made us essential to galactic survival. The chamber was completely silent. The universe is not a safe place that can be controlled by following ancient procedures. It is vast and strange and full of threats that your careful rules cannot handle. You exiled us because you feared change. But change is the only thing that allows life to continue when the impossible becomes real. President Lee gestured toward the tactical displays showing the former Devourer invasion routes. You have learned that staying the same is not safety, it is stagnation, it is death. The galaxy needs species that can grow, adapt, and face the unknown with creativity instead of fear. The final vote was not about exile.
It was about leadership.
And for the first time in galactic history, it was unanimous in a different way. 847 species voted to accept human guidance in facing whatever challenges the universe might bring. Admiral Yanhua Shin's ships now patrolled the Outer Rim, watching for new threats, with sensors that could detect dangers the galaxy had never imagined. But they were no longer exiles guarding an empty frontier. They were the vanguard of a galactic civilization that had finally learned the difference between dangerous and necessary. Humanity had burned the galactic rulebook and built something better from its ashes. The universe was vast and full of wonders and terrors that no single species could face alone. But together, with human adaptability leading the way, the galaxy was ready for whatever came next. The exile was over. The real journey was just beginning.